Hey, Marlene. I cannot hear you, hon. Think we've got a.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Can you hear
You're
me now?
unmuted. Yes. I'd love
Okay,
to know you're
yay.
unmuted. You have so much to say. How are you? Happy Saturday.
Oh, happy Saturday. Thank you so much for having me. And I've been on all morning since the beginning. And of course, right when it's my turn, you said I'm frozen. I'm like, what happened?
Well, that's technology for you, but I'm just very grateful that you're able to join us today and share with us your story. Your topic of conversation is an intriguing one, my
Yes.
incompetent cervix. And your mind starts wondering, what is she talking about?
Talking about.
My incompetent cervix. Now, I know what you're talking about, but other individuals on the outside who's listening to you for the first time may have no idea. So I'm going to let you take it away, and then I'll meet you at the end with some additional questions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much again, Michelle, for putting this on. I commend you for taking on such a heroic task because planning anything, as we know, is never easy. And just making sure that you cover all of the bases for the members of the infertility community is just very commendable. And I'm so very grateful for you for putting this on. Hi, everyone. My name is Marline Duroseau. I have known Michelle since I met her at the fifth annual South Florida Fertility Expo. And at that expo, I've had the pleasure and opportunity to meet so many of the other young women and presenters that were on today, Miss Laura, Miss Sandra with Filling Empty Wombs, Dr. K, just every Dr. Hammond with the K Foundation, just everyone, and a pleasure of meeting all of the speakers here. So thank you all so much, and I'm happy to be here today. Like Michelle mentioned, I wanted to discuss something that a lot of times we often don't speak about. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even know this term existed. I didn't even know it was something that I needed to look out for. No one knew. So just like between Dr. Taz and Joyson was saying, how many people ever even bring up infertility in your family? And of course, the resounding answer was, we never heard it. No one talks about it. So, unbeknownst to us, we've now embarked on an infertility journey that not only do you not know how to approach it, you just never even thought you'd be there. So, my infertility journey was coupled with something called incompetent cervix, which now I think the medical term is kind of changing to have it be called cervical insufficiency, because like a lot of you on here, I am a person of faith and I am a believer. So to deem a part of your body incompetent, you're like, well, I know God didn't make my cervix incompetent. What is that, right? But nonetheless, that was the term that was given to it. So I'm going to take a brief amount of minutes to talk about my story and then incorporate how incompetent cervix played a role in that, and just give out some information just to educate everyone out there a little bit more on incompetent cervix. My fertility journey lasted from beginning to end about 15 years. Um, like Lulu, you get married, and you just think you're going to have these children, and unbeknownst to us, it doesn't happen. It starts, to weigh on you, like, why hasn't this happened yet? And oftentimes, as a young married couple or just a young person, you're not really necessarily thinking about kids right away. But you're just kind of doing the do, having fun, living life. But in our case, it just didn't seem to happen for us. Now, I have to tell you that did get a lot of practice on raising children and working with children, in the sense that I'd always known that I wanted a big family. I had a lot of cousins. I used to babysit a lot of the times for people in my neighborhood. And also, when I married my husband, he had my big son, is who I call him, Richard. He's been with me since a little before he turned 2. So I always call him my one baby who's given me no labor pains. And he's just such a joy. That's my heart. So my husband and I tried, and we eventually went to see a fertility doctor. We started off with IUIs, which are intrauterine insemination. And I want to say we had 5 cycles of IUI, but unfortunately, those cycles didn't take. We did not end up conceiving. We eventually graduated on to IVF. And luckily for us, after our first try with IVF, we found success and became pregnant. So, needless to say, we were over the moon, totally excited. It was just wonderful. And the thing about this, too, to add to the stigma and the shame, is that once our family and friends knew we were pregnant, no one knew that we were having a hard time. Everybody just figured, well, they aren't ready. And Marlene's always busy anyway. So, when she has a chance, she'll take time to have a baby. So no one knew we had an infertility issue. And I think especially the fact that my husband already had his son Richard, no one really even questioned anything. They just figured we weren't ready and we do it when we were ready. So when we finally got pregnant, we had that underlying extra excitement because it took us such a long time to get there, and the whole family was happy. Everyone was excited. Unbeknownst to us, I ended up having some difficulties in the sense that I woke up one day and passed like a blood clot. And it was weird because I had no pain. I had, no symptoms, nothing. I just passed this clot and ended up going to the doctor. And fast forward, they told me basically my cervix was open, and she showed me a diagram in the doctor's office. It's like one of these medical diagrams that shows you what a uterus looks like and what your cervix is supposed to look like. And mine didn't look like that. She said I was already dilated 1 centimeter. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? I don't understand. How does that happen? And at this point, I believe I was either 17 or 18 weeks, something along those lines. And that's when we went in for, kind of an emergency surgery where, again, this is the first time I'm hearing of this because I didn't know what they were going to do, what it meant. But they went in to place what's called a cerclage. And the cerclage is something that's supposed to close your cervix and keep it closed. And the one that I did was a McDonald cerclage, where they go in vaginally and basically do like a purse string stitch and close your cervix. So at that point, I didn't think anything of it. And I'm still not necessarily worried. I'm just like, okay, is the baby okay? Because when you're going through infertility and you have to undergo IUI and IVF, one of the things that's special about that is that you get a lot of ultrasounds, right? And those ultrasounds, I know a lot of you can probably relate, they're so special because once you're able to see your baby, hear your baby, you just get reassured with this excitement. So for me, I kind of was naive to the severity of what was happening because in my brain, the baby was fine and that's all I cared about, right? So fast forward a little bit, they did the stitch and then I became really, really ill. Right after the surgery, I was in the hospital and the plan was in about, once I was stabilized, I was just going to go home and be basically on like a modified bed rest with this stitch until we got to the end of the pregnancy. That, okay, not a problem. So that's not what happened. Okay, so so I ended up being in the hospital until I delivered. I just developed contractions that never went away. Just was having fevers, things of that nature. And long story short, I ended up having to deliver our daughter at 22 weeks and 1 day. I named her Angel Grace. And the reason why I had to deliver her was they were doing continual blood testing. I was getting pricked and prodded maybe 3 to 4 times a day. That's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day when you're on hospital bed rest. But one day, one of those days, the blood and my urine came back extremely bad. And it was, I had to deliver the baby in order for me to survive. I had sepsis. And for those of you who don't know, sepsis is like a blood infection. So, I mean, it was just bad. The infectious disease doctor said the numbers that he saw, he hadn't seen that in such a long time. So it was a race against time. So they induced my labor. I ended up delivering my daughter vaginally, whole 9 yards, and a whole drama with the epidural. But again, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. And that's what kind of kicked off my quest to figure out what the hell happened. What the heck was this? Why is my cervix not working? How does this even happen? Like the already you're confused and just baffled by the fact that you're undergoing this infertility journey. And like a lot of people say, your goal is, okay, boom, I'm pregnant. Then it became, oh my gosh, not only do you pray and do the work and focus on getting pregnant, now I have to worry about staying pregnant too. Like, in what world is that fair? It was horrible, horrible. So we ended up having, like I said, delivering Angel Grace, and I began my quest to try to figure out what happened, how to fix it, what to do next. After lots of therapy, my OB, hooked me up with a wonderful therapist. And it's really important to find a therapist that you can, be aligned with. And luckily for me, after meeting her for the first time, we clicked very well. And it was just really hard for me to process the loss. I was having a very, very difficult time because at that point, I was on the maternity floor, and to see how everyone got to go home with their babies, but I went home with a purple box. And it was just not a very, ideal situation. And yeah, so my therapist is really who helped me get through a lot of the post-traumatic stress from that loss. And finally, she also helped me get to the point where I knew when I was, ready to try again. So we mustered up the courage and the faith to try again. And the good thing is that my husband and I found success in our second IVF and ended up pregnant with our twins. And by now, the game plan was, as soon as I find out I'm pregnant, I had switched to a high risk OB. And as soon as we found out I'm pregnant, we were going to do the cerclage at 12 weeks, because normally by 12 weeks, they consider your pregnancy viable. So we did the cerclage surgery at 12 weeks. So in my brain, I'm just going to go on and continue with that pregnancy, because now we know what it is. Now I went in and had the surgery when I was 12 weeks pregnant with the boys. And that's it. Life will be great. No, that's not what happened. So even although I went now to get this cerclage, do you guys know that when I actually hit 22 weeks, and remember, 22 weeks is when I lost our daughter, 22 weeks in one day. In my twin pregnancy, I hit 22 weeks and I ended up in the hospital again. Wasn't feeling good and nothing hurt. I just felt weird. I felt weird, and I felt like something. It's kind of like if you have to use the restroom, but then you don't have to use the restroom. It felt like something was in my vagina. So long story short, it was a Saturday. We ended up going to the hospital. The doctor came in. Everybody, looked at me. They checked. They do their speculum. My cervix was closed. My cervix was high. Okay, great. So he said, I'm going to send you home on, he goes, no, the next step is for you to do bed rest. But for me to know for sure that you rested, because remember, this was a Saturday. He says, for me to know for sure that you rested, I'm not sending you home to rest, because I know you're not going to sit down somewhere. And I'm an Aries, like some of the Taurus out there. Us Aries, we very strong-willed. And, well, maybe if I just go and take 2 steps, it won't be that bad, right? And I say that to say, just because as a woman, we always have 10,000 things going on. We try to be superwoman. We try to do it all. And sometimes when instruction is given to us for our benefit, in our effort to help other people and still maintain whatever, we sometimes go against it, which is, I'm learning now that that's no bueno, right? So the doctor said, in order. Okay. So the doctor said, in order for me to know for sure that, you're on bed rest, they kept, yes, I'm almost done. Okay, sorry. So in that case, the doctor said for me to make sure that you didn't go anywhere, I stayed in the hospital, and then he would give me a check again on the following Monday. So Monday morning rolled around, 9 o'clock in the morning. So that means I've been in the hospital, didn't leave my bed. The nurses took care of me, bedpan if I needed to use the restroom, all of that. And Monday morning came in 9 o'clock, and he had some students. He asked me permission if the students can witness. Great, no problem. Everybody can see. Everybody sees my stuff anyway, because when you're going under infertility, your legs are always propped open and everybody's trying to figure things out. But that's another story. Okay, so yeah. And then I saw the look on the doctor's face when he checked me. And he said, He doesn't understand. And I was already dilated 2 centimeters. And mind you, this is Monday morning at 9. I went in Saturday afternoon, 2 o'clock. Didn't leave, didn't do anything. And remember when they checked me at 2, well, when I went into the hospital, my cervix was high, my cervix was closed. So what happened between Saturday and Monday? So I guess in my brain, that discomfort I was feeling, I guess, is my cervix opening. So at that point, I freaked out because it was exactly 22 weeks. So now all of the emotions, all of the psychological effects, all of the everything just came rushing back to me. And the fear set in that I would lose my babies. How could this be happening again? I just don't understand. And mind you guys, I have a cerclage. So now I think, well, if I'm dilated with the cerclage, what's going to happen to my cervix? Is it going to rip? Then that means I can't try. Like, it was just horrible. And because I got so freaked out, I started having contractions, and I went in with no contractions. So I started having contractions, and my doctor had to give me what they call the come to Jesus talk, and said, listen, I know this is hard, but you're going to have to try and remain calm, because I want to be able to help you, and we have a plan to help you. But you can't, the way you are is now manifesting in your body, so we can't do anything for you. So then I felt guilty and cried even more, because now it's my fault that I can't start the help as soon as I could get the help. So I was able to relax. They gave me some medication. And on Tuesday morning, I went in for another surgery to remove the old cerclage, close me back up with the new placement. And long story short, my cervix had failed me again. I ended up being in the hospital until I delivered the boys at 26 weeks and 1 day. So needless to say, they were micro preemies, and they had a 4-month NICU stay. And that's a whole nother video for a whole nother day. A lot of parts of our stories can be to be continued, right? So that's ended up what happening with my cervix again. And thank goodness the boys are doing great. It was a pretty tough time in the beginning, but they're okay. And then fast forward, the last part of my cerclage, one of the things that we had was a frozen embryo. And it's really tricky because you want to be able to decide, what you're going to do. So my husband and I ended up doing another cycle. This is fast forward 5 years. And before we decided to do the cycle, I really started to deep dive and do research on the incompetent cervix. And I found out about a abdominal cerclage. It's something that was very much more invasive compared to the vaginal cerclage. So a lot of people didn't really talk about it or provide it as an option because it was a big surgery. And what they do with the abdominal cerclage is, instead of going in vaginally to place the cerclage, they have to do it laparoscopically, and they go above your ligaments in your uterus by your leg. And basically, if this is your uterus here, normally with the vaginal cerclage, they have to go here to try to place it, but you can only get so far because you run into ligaments. So what they do with the abdominal, they do it laparoscopically, and they go in and sew the uterus up here. So at the base of your uterus, the top of the cervix is where they place the stitch, and they have to move your bladder. It's like a big surgery. So that's what I ended up doing. And with that type of surgery, you have to have a C-section to deliver, because there's no way that the baby can pass through your vaginal canal. So with that, thank goodness, with my transabdominal cerclage, we were able to successfully carry my last baby, also a baby boy, through my scheduled C-section at 38 weeks and 1 day. So that's my journey with the use of the cerclage and incompetent cervix. And it's just something that I want to make sure I talk about. And Michelle, if I may, I know it's already 1:20, but I just need a few more minutes to talk about the statistics on cerclages and what women who are trying to conceive, or even if you know other women in your family. Like, I'm a big advocate now to talk to my nieces, my friends, whoever I can find, before pregnancy, during pregnancy. And I try to approach it in a way as to not scare them, but it's one of the things that I do as a, advocate, and people are going into appointments, giving them those questions, to ask and what to look for. And definitely having their cervix checked is one of those things that I make sure people do. Because it really is a scary feeling knowing that you're pregnant and you're just walking around living your life, and then you're thinking, oh my gosh, my baby may fall out. Like that's it's a very daunting experience to think about and to go through. So with that, I want to kind of just go over a few stats here. Incompetent cervix, which is now also called cervical insufficiency, it occurs when weak cervical tissue causes or contributes to premature birth or the loss of an otherwise healthy pregnancy. So you see, it helps to contribute to premature birth or the loss of an otherwise healthy pregnancy. And with both of my stories, that was the case. The premature birth was as a result of the incompetent cervix from my twins, and the loss of an otherwise pregnancy was my first pregnancy. The other thing is how do you get incompetent cervix? Like what is that? So cervical incompetence, it can be acquired or it can be congenital. The most congenital cause is a defect in when the embryo was developing with their Mullerian ducts. So in the formation of an embryo, this is before you're even born. Sometimes if you do have congenital incompetent cervix issues, it's from when you were born, something that you may not even know. And a lot of times it may be acquired if, for instance, gynecologically, we go to have tests done. So let's say you have a pap smear and your pap smear comes back abnormal. And a lot of the times what the doctor suggests is, a leak procedure or any type of procedure on your cervix that may cause, future weakening of the muscles of the cervix. Okay. Incompetent cervix, it happens in about 1 to 2% of pregnancies. So although that's not a big number, it doesn't lessen the impact that a woman has when they experience incompetent cervix. And also almost 25% of babies are miscarried in the second trimester as a result of the incompetent cervix. So once we hit that second trimester, which is after the 12 to 14 month mark, that's when, if you have an incompetent cervix issue, it'll start to manifest itself. Can someone tell if they have incompetent cervix? Normally, cervical insufficiency, it frequents itself with no symptoms, right? You don't really, like in both cases that I was telling you guys, I don't know if it's just like a womanly instinct, but I had no pain. You just feel uncomfortable. I don't even know how to describe it. I can probably do a deep dive later on to talk about it, but you have no symptoms. There's no pain. There's no, in my case, the first time I had a blood clot, and it was just a blood clot. There was no extra blood coming out or anything. It was just that. So during the second trimester of pregnancy, the most common sign of incompetent cervix is painless cervical dilation and bulging of the fetal membranes. Expectant mothers, on the other hand, are unable to feel this at all. And that was my case. You don't feel it. Okay. And outside of the cerclage being used as a treatment for incompetent cervix, one of the other options that is provided is the use of progesterone. And during a fertility cycle, the progesterone also helps to nourish the pregnancy and give you that extra boost of hormones that the baby needs. But progesterone is also used with the cervical incompetence. With my second pregnancy, the one that I carried all the way to 38 weeks in one day, I was getting weekly progesterone and oil injections because that would help quiet down my uterus, make sure it stayed quiet so I didn't have any extra contractions or anything that would contribute to or potentially contribute to my cervix wanting to open up. And just so you know, the cervical cerclage, it helps to prevent miscarriage or premature labor that's caused by the incompetent cervix. And the procedure is usually 85 to 95% successful. So that's the cervical cerclage, the vaginal one. And the one that I have, which is the transabdominal cerclage, to me, that one is 99.9% effective, right? Because there is no no issues with that one. That cervix is not bulging, it's not going anywhere. However, it is a greater risk when you have the abdominal one. So that's something that you please have to speak with your medical provider. And I will tell you that with the abdominal cerclage, some of the providers don't really want women to do it, or they kind of give you a different option because they feel like the vaginal one should suffice. But that's where the advocacy for yourself comes into play, because my first pregnancy, I had no cerclage. The second pregnancy, I had two cerclages. They still didn't work. So imagine going into a third pregnancy with the thinking that you're going to lose your baby. The fear alone will cause that stress that then can lead to you having, issues altogether. So those were just a few of the items that I wanted to talk about as it relates to incompetent cervix. So it's very important to, when you get pregnant, talk to your doctor, or even before you get pregnant. If you're having to have follow-up procedures that involve your cervix, talk to the practitioner. Ask them how they're going to go in. Is there a way that they can, give you meds to dilate the cervix if you're going to have a LEEP or a hysteroscopy or laparoscopy surgery? Because sometimes they mechanically open up the cervix so that they can put the instrument in and look, which is also important. But how does that affect you down the line? And then talk to your family members, right? Mom, auntie, cousin. Did anyone have issues with their cervix, growing up? And the last thing I want to add is, just to say how we have to break the silence, break the stigma, and talk about this stuff, because you never know how you may be impacting and helping someone else.
Thank you so much, Marlene. We have a really quick question before we wrap up. How common is this incompetent cervix? Because I've
The
never heard of it before, so until you shared with me. So tell me,
Mhm.
how common is this condition?
The incompetent cervix occurs in about 1 to 2% of pregnancies. Now, what that looks like in the different demographics, I'm not sure, but I can tell you that I think that it's more common than we think, because the older I'm getting and I'm thinking back to my childhood, I do remember one of my aunts, my uncle's wife. I remember every time she got pregnant, she couldn't do anything. I think I was 8 or 9 at the time, and it's always, oh no, auntie is pregnant. She just has to lay there. So it was my joy, because my goal was to go over there and help. And she had an older son. I would help with my cousins. Like, it wasn't an issue. But the more I think about it, I'm like, that's probably what she had, right? Where the doctors told her no heavy lifting, she can't work, maybe the sofa to the bathroom to the bed. Like, that's what I remember her routine was, until she was able to have the baby. So it is something that I think is more common than we know, but talking about it and sharing our experiences will help, and also asking questions as well as it relates to your cervix.
Awesome. So thank you so much,
Yes.
Marlene. And I mean, again, it's a topic that I'm not familiar with, and I'm sure a lot of people are not familiar with. But like you said, we've seen these symptoms where pregnant ladies are unable to work, unable to lift, unable to do anything, and they're
Right.
given complete bed rest and considered a high risk. And so, in this day and age, I think it's important for us to be informed so that we can educate. I think I'd be curious to know, what are some of the early symptoms, or are there things that we're doing to our bodies that bring it on as an onset? You made reference to your grandmother or your aunt back in Haiti, right?
Mhm.
Now, could it be a case where, women back then were working really hard and they're lifting heavy things? And because I remember growing up, I would always be told, don't lift anything too heavy. Let the boys lift it. You're going to hurt yourself. And
Yeah.
now I'm wondering if those are some of the actions that are connected right back to this official description of an incompetent cervix. I like the name incompetent cervix versus the other one. I think it's more, in
Yeah.
your face,
Right. Right.
So tell me, do you think, are there things that we're doing, or as women, that can bring on this sort of condition?
I have to tell you that my mom was really big when I was younger on not lifting or doing things that are too strenuous, because believe it or not, it affects when you're straining with your organs and things like that. But I don't think it's anything that we do or have done, because the more I read about it, some of the people who end up with incompetent cervix are children of women in the baby boom time, the baby boomers that had to take a particular medication for nausea. So when they were pregnant, like let's say my mom is a baby boomer. And if she had nausea, they found that I don't remember the name of the medication that they prescribed for those women back then that just had the bad case of nausea. We're finding that in taking that medication, it affected those glands when the baby was forming, in their body. So that may cause incompetent cervix. It's one of the textbook reasons if it's congenital. So that means it's part of their makeup versus something they did physically. And in terms of just us being more healthy, I think that educating ourselves is important, because a lot of times we go to the doctor and they need to go in vaginally to do whatever the heck it is that they're doing. But now I'm finding that we don't really know what all that means. You see instruments, cling, clang, cling, you can hear them and everything, but what are they pulling? What are they tugging on? What are they moving? So just asking questions on, if I have to have this procedure done, how does it affect, or is there any impact on my cervix down the line? So physically, I don't think it's anything we've done, because the cervix in itself has to be triggered, like hormones and certain things have to be in place for it to softly dilate, kind of like when you're ready to give birth. I'm not a doctor, guys, but your brain signals certain things, and then the cervix automatically, softens up and opens up. I think it's more of that type of nature versus something physically. But I think having a more healthier lifestyle will definitely help. And I know Laura is really big on natural fertility and different things that we can do and consume to help. So, anything I think more in terms of natural, in terms of what we ingest and what we put into our bodies, I think will help strengthen it. And just being more mindful of any any vaginal procedures that may involve the use of the cervix, and and trying to find out. Remember, I was telling you about asking your parents, because I had to go ask my mom after I find out, Mom, did you take any medication for nausea when you were pregnant with me? And she goes, no, because she had no nausea. And it's so funny how everybody is different, because my big sister, she was sick for every single pregnancy. She has 5 kids. I have to tell you, ladies, when I tell you no nausea, never threw up, never. That's why when I tell you all of a sudden I don't feel good. So what I worry about, and also to answer your question, Michelle, something else that women can look for if they're pregnant is maybe increased discharge. And again, it won't have a smell, it doesn't have a color, but it's just you're discharging a lot. Sometimes that's a symptom, right? Or an indicator that something's going on with your uterus, because pregnancy causes a lot of discharge, or more than normal anyway. But if you feel a way about it, definitely go get it checked out. But I don't think it's anything physical that we've done.
Awesome. Well, thank you so
Mhm.
much for that education and
Yes.
information. Definitely has me thinking a lot, just about the journey in general and all the things that we as women have to go through.
Right.
Um, Hope these kids realize the fight we had to go through to make them come
Yes.
into the world.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that being said, Marlene, I would like to thank you. And so I'll tell our guests, please stand by. We're going to have a brief presentation by one of our sponsors, Mira. We're going to talk a little bit about their product, what they're doing, and it's basically going to tell us a little bit about our raffle prize, so that those of us who are seeing these ads popping up on social media can understand what it's all about. And we do have one as a raffle prize for us here today.
I
So,
wanted to add, Michelle, if it's okay, people
sure.
can reach me on my website, www.mcdbe.com, and my IG at mcdbe.com. And I also wrote a book about my journey. It'll happen by 30. The book is here to serve as a resource for anybody else that's on their own journey. And I'm here to help women who are in families, men who are on the family building journey. So reach out to me, and we'll go from there. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Marlene.
Yes.
Maestro, take it away.